Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men, that is Adjectiveless X-Men, number 27, cover dated December 1993. So the cover here by Richard Bennett, who is also the artist of the interior comic story, featuring Mr Sinister, really front and center there, being attacked by Rogue, Beast and Iceman. And if you didn't pay attention, you'd almost miss her. Here behind Mr. Sinister, we have a new character introduced in this issue, and that is Threnody. So let's open this one up to the first page, a splash page here, and see what we have. So the title of the story is A Song of Mourning, A Cry of Joy. And the creative team is Fabian Nicieza, writer, Richard Bennett, guest penciler. Richard Bennett, an artist from Uruguay, in fact South American. Guest inkers Bob Wiacek and Scott Hanna, Bill Oakley letterer, and Joe Rosas colorist. And Richard Bennett, having come off doing Uncanny X-Men 303, the Death of Illyana issue, and it's kind of appropriate that he's guest penciling on this issue, filling in for Andy Kubert, because this is another legacy virus focused issue of the X-Books, and one that features the death of a character from X-Book history. I won't say who it is just yet, but let's continue along with the story. So this is our introduction to Threnody here. The setting is Los Angeles, an alleyway off Crenshaw Boulevard. No one in the neighborhood knows her name. No one really cares either. So she's making noise and a disturbance. We're told by the narrative caption she's been living on the streets around the area for about 3 weeks. Mary Bakerman, who lives over the grocery store, called her Threnody because the woman was always crying on about something or other. Mary plays a lot of Scrabble, triple word score, the name stuck. So Threnody is from the Greek, and it means a lamentation, a funeral dirge, a lamentation especially for the dead. So that's very appropriate for this new character and the way her powers work. So these police come to investigate. They realize who it is, and she's got this power build-up going on. And this particular police guy asks Threnody, "What are you doing? What is this?" And then she explodes. So we'll learn a little later exactly what her power is and how it operates in the issue. But those officers are dead. And she says she's sorry, so sorry she can't help it, can't stop feeling their pain, and all of it builds up inside me until I can't keep it in anymore. I'm sorry, she says. And she's right beside here the Los Angeles County General Hospital, and it so happens that Rogue is leaning out the window with her coffee here and hears the explosion, but doesn't see what happened. And what I want to point out here in terms of Richard Bennett's art influences, in particular in this panel, we see her here with her this kind of twisted, exaggerated anatomy, and the twisting of her fingers almost into claws, and the expression on her face, and the drool and tears emerging from her face here. She looks an awful lot like a Todd McFarlane influenced drawing. And so throughout this, I see with the twisting of the anatomy of characters a Todd McFarlane influence. I also see Neil Adams influence, and of course Jim Lee influence. And I think that Bennett is blending those influences in the issue. Like this upshot here, which is pretty ambitious, pretty unusual, is the kind of thing that Neil Adams would be renowned for. So I'll point some of those things out as I go through the art in the story. And then we switch scene inside the hospital to this particular room. And the person who is in the bed here is, let's see, do we get her name here just yet? No, it's at this point. So it's Infectia. And Infectia is a character from X Factor, issues 29 to 31 by Louise Simonson and Walter Simonson. And she was a character who tried to kill specifically Iceman and Beast in those issues when she was trying to get control of X Factor's ship. So interesting now that they've come around to visit her as she is suffering and dying from Strife's legacy virus. So we have a little comic business here between Rogue and Iceman, where he puts some ice cubes in her coffee and she says she likes her coffee hot. He apologizes, and then Beast says here, and he's hanging from the ceiling, I like that detail, I don't think the physicians here have a clue as to what they're dealing with, but the blood charts and the T-cell charts read almost identically to poor Ileana's, and that, my compadres, is extremely frightening. So I really like this shot in this particular panel, where our point of view is Beast's eye, and we're looking out the lens of his glasses, or one of the lenses of his glasses there, so we can see the metal frames of the lens. That's a pretty intriguing, pretty inventive shot by Richard Bennett. Shows that, you know, like he's thinking about how to tell this story and picking some interesting angles for the reader. So Beast swings down, and he talks about here how everybody's feeling frustrated by this, by the legacy virus. He says he's a biogeneticist by training. How do you think it makes me feel seeing the inexorable grinding toll this disease is taking? And then we have the sudden arrival of a doctor. And this guy introduces himself as Dr. Nathan Milbury. Now, if you were paying attention in previous issues of Nicieza's X-Men, you'll recognize that name from X-Men number 23 and 24 as the name of Scott Summers' grandparents' neighbor in Alaska, who turns out at the end of issue 23 and throughout issue 24 to be Mr. Sinister in disguise. And so it turns out to be the case with this guy too. And so he is here talking about the treatment of the patient, and he's there to take a blood sample, which he does here, putting on his gloves and putting the syringe into Infectia's arm to withdraw the blood sample. And in the meantime, he gives a little speech here about how, as a physician, he deplored the hesitancy his profession took in rallying to fight the spread of AIDS. So we're seeing a pointed comparison between the legacy virus, Strife's legacy virus, and the AIDS virus. And Milbury says here, I'd rather not see the same thing repeated here. And for those out there who feel it's God's will, first homosexuals, now mutants, well, I guess I would even treat those people too, though I just as well referred to them to Dr. Kevorkian. So Dr. Kevorkian was a so-called mercy-killing doctor, a guy who practiced euthanasia and broke laws in the US for that and was on the run because of it. So interesting kind of little moral commentary here, and in terms of who this figure turns out to be, it'll be interesting, but it raises some kind of moral puzzles in this issue about the points at which being humane and compassionate regarding patients, and the point that the scientist takes over. That's explored in this issue, in particular in respect of Dr. McCoy here, the Beast, and his feelings about the legacy virus and what's happening to Infectia here, and given the fact that she tried to kill him back in the X-Factor days. So she says here to like we have a little explanation of this this kind of pod that closes over Infectia, and the Milbury says, as you see, we're keeping her protected within an environmental containment unit. And Hank draws the inference, of course, if her powers do break down and they flare uncontrollably, everyone in this hospital could be affected. And she says, girls got to go out with a bang, right, Hank? And Milbury asks, are you friends with Josephine? I had no idea. And Bobby makes the point here, actually she almost killed Hank once. And he says, but I don't take those kinds of things personally. And this is where we could do with a little footnote by Bob Harris, but of course we don't get one. We don't get a single footnote in any of this issue at all. And Milbury says she was looking for a bio-researcher named Gordon Lefferts, a brilliant eccentric man. Since none of the major pharmaceutical firms would work with him, Lefferts had a private lab. The name sounds familiar, says Beast. Why wouldn't they hire him? Because Lefferts was a mutant, and apparently one of the first victims to die of this legacy virus. And who is that? Who is Gordon Lefferts? Well, you saw him in the Executioner's Song crossover, and last seen in that series in X Factor number 18, the last part of the series, where he opened the canister that Sinister got from Strife, which released the legacy virus. He was seen there having a cough. And then in X-Men 24, adjectiveless X-Men 24, it's revealed by Sinister to Scott Summers to Cyclops that his assistant, this Gordon Lefferts, is dead and buried in Alaska. So Milbury walks off, leaving the trio with Infectia in the hospital room. And I like this little business, this kind of bit of storytelling here by Bennett, with Bobby putting his hands on the pod over Infectia and she touching his hand, the palm of his hand, through the pod. And I like the angle here as well, this kind of upshot on Rogue and Bobby looking down at Infectia. And she asks Hank and Bobby, can you get me out of this room? I hate it. I want to see the stars, the moon, maybe the sunrise. And Hank says, you can't, not right now, not in your condition, you're too weak, I'm sorry. But and then they're interrupted by a nurse who's come to take a blood sample. And of course this is mysterious because Milbury's just been in taking the sample, and the nurse says, who? I'm sorry, there's no one on staff by that name or description, no one at all. And then we see these very familiar fluttering ribbons, which are part of Sinister's distinctive costume. And then we switch to Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, the X-Mansion, and it is a crisp autumn breeze cutting through the early morning air as the woman named Elizabeth Braddock breathes in deeply and wonders what it will be like when she breathes no more. So here we really do need a footnote from Bob Harris, and he's messed up, because what happens here, if you didn't pick up Adjectiveless X-Men Annual number 2, you wouldn't know that Elizabeth Braddock, aka Revanche here, has been infected with the legacy virus. So Psylocke attacks her, and they have a bit of kind of tense dialogue here. And Elizabeth says, oh, I understand, you wanted to check out my reflexes, see if I could still perform, to see if the fact that I'm dying from this damnable legacy virus has slowed me down. Rest assured, I can still do everything I used to do, Psylocke. I can still hit, still hurt, and if need be, I can still kill. And Psylocke says, Betsy Braddock never did any of those things. So they're still arguing with each other regarding who is the real Elizabeth Braddock, who's the real Psylocke. But as I said, X-Men Annual 2, it's revealed that Revanche is infected with the legacy virus. And then we're back in Los Angeles, and Beast has used information from Milbury to go to Lefferts' lab in Compton. Rogue here says, nice neighborhood. And so they break into the storage locker, which is the location of Lefferts' lab. And I've got to turn this to the horizontal, make sure you can see that. And inside you've got Threnody and some homeless people. And Rogue infers that they've probably been using the empty lab as a shelter for now. Of the three of us, you're the most normal in appearance, Rogue Beast says, trying to assuage their fears. We don't need them running out onto the streets and drawing attention to our activities. So Threnody here is rambling about all their pain, like the Bubble Man, just like the Bubble Man. And Rogue takes hold of her. Wait, slow down. What did you say? Whose pain do you feel? Not you, but you're like them, like the Bubble Man. Who's the Bubble Man? Rogue asks. Why do you think we're like him? Just like at the hospital, bubble people make me scream. They tried to take Bubble Man's stuff, but I didn't let them. Part of his pain, I said. Let his pain stay, I said. Stay in spirit, like a ghost watching over me. So she makes her way away from Rogue. And something I want to observe here regarding Richard Bennett's choice in drawing Rogue is it's interesting that he's drawing her, yes, in the Jim Lee redesigned costume, but minus the leather jacket. And I think, you know, even though I don't have a problem really with the jacket, I think she does look better. It's more, I don't know, logical to have her in the costume without the jacket. Makes more sense, given her invulnerability to extremes of temperature, hot or cold. What's the jacket for, you know? So Bennett removes it for this issue. And, you know, I'm setting aside the idea that he might have removed it because he didn't like drawing it. I don't think he has a problem drawing anything like that. So I think it's an aesthetic choice, and I like it, is what I want to say. So Bennett, very good with equipment and mechanical type equipment and things like that. You can see it on display very well on this particular page here. And so Rogue is just still fascinated by Threnody as she makes her way out of the laboratory, and she decides to go after her. She says here it's a little too much like looking in the mirror because of Threnady's obsession with pain and the pain of others. So she follows her here. A nice anchor image of Rogue flying here. Great work on the Beast throughout this issue as well. And so Threnody here can feel her power building up again. So what is all that about? But before anything happens, she runs into none other than Mr. Sinister. So she says here, I can't do it again. They hurt, so I hurt, and then I make everybody hurt. She runs into Sinister, great anchor image of Sinister holding out his hand to her. And he says to her, you are a gifted child, Threnody. Though your gift is born from the pain of others, I might not be able to change that, but I can make sure your powers, your ability to feed from the energy release inherent in the breakdown of a mutant's powers, can be used for a greater good. Do you wish to help me, or do you wish me to help you? And so she takes up his offer. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Todd McFarlane influence, I see it here, in particular on Threnody, in particular here on the way that her well, I might as well just say it this way, her posterior is rendered here. Very Todd McFarlane-esque like. Also the hands here, her hand reaching out for Sinister's, very like McFarlane. So I'm pretty sure of those combination of influences, Jim Lee, McFarlane, and then coming up there's going to be a great image that I'll point out to be a Neil Adams style image. And the whole kind of twisting of the bodies here, that's very McFarlane-esque as well. So Rogue arrives on the scene, and she punches Sinister in the jaw. And of course this is this kind of revelation about Sinister, that he kind of he's got this kind of molecular flexibility. He's a bit like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. So he just kind of rolls with that punch. Rogue isn't really able to do him much damage. And she says to him, I'm not going to let you get the girl like you got Infectia's blood supply. Dr. Milbury, in scare quotes. But Infectia says, you don't understand. Only the pain gets me, and only I get the pain. And this time, we got each other, but good. And then she explodes, or she lets loose, rather, with a plasma blast, as it turns out. So this leaves everyone floored by the blast. Of course, Rogue is invulnerable, Mr. Sinister too, in his fashion. So they're going to survive it, unlike the police officers earlier in the issue. And Rogue is pulled from the rubble by Beast. And I like this little detail here of Iceman using a big kind of ice shovel to remove the rubble from over Threnody, and he helps her up. So that's a nice detail. And then Mr. Sinister says here, it is just so rare to see any of you follow your instincts, always so preoccupied by burdensome complications like morals and ethics, aren't you? So this enrages the Beast, who leaps on Sinister. And this is a really weird detail here. I wonder what Bennett was going for, where it seems like Beast has not only grabbed Sinister by his tunic, so to speak, but he's sticking his thumb right into Sinister's mouth. Very weird, strange. And by this point he's released his thumb from Sinister's mouth, just has him by the throat. And basically Sinister says to him, I want to see an end to this disease because it was unexpected and I don't like unexpected things. And Beast basically flings him into a wall. Well, isn't that just too bad? Life is full of surprises. Great work here, anatomical work on the Beast's arm here. And back muscles as well, nicely done. But this is a weird little element, the kind of panel borders here. I'm not sure what's going on and why this has a separate kind of suggested panel here. It's strange. I don't know what's happening. I see, Bennett uses this, something like this, on another page coming up where it makes a little bit more sense, but I really don't know what he's going for here with this. And Sinister says, I want to find a cure for this disease as much, indeed more, than any of you. And this is intriguing. This is a little kind of mystery here as to why Sinister would want to find a cure for the disease more than any of the rest of them. Beast makes the point because it interferes with your plans for Scott and Jean. Partially, yes, he says. And what part does she play in all of this then? Rogue asks. She is known only as Threnody. She's a mutant. Sinister explains. This is the Neil Adams perspective here. This kind of upshot three-quarter profile on Sinister. The very first time I read this comic back in 1993, this one really fascinated me. I was fascinated by how he pulled this off. And as I said, it is very Neil Adams inspired. And he explains here, she's an empathic emotion absorber, translating that emotion into plasma energy. So plasma energy, just like Havoc, but it appears she can only absorb pain. And at that, only the pain of mutants who are suffering from the legacy virus. So he continues, in light of our pressing need for subjects from which we could learn more about this disease, Threnody will serve as an excellent bloodhound. So Rogue is unhappy that Sinister would be using her despite her agony, and here Beast cuts in. So this is the moral dilemma. Rogue, please, you don't understand. And Rogue says, that's right, I don't. Trinity's got no control over her powers, and all they can do is bring her unhappiness. I know what that's like, and I know how easy it can be to be used by someone who offers you a chance to learn how to control your life. And Sinister here, the manipulator, says, why, Rogue, do you refer to myself or to Xavier? But maybe even she's referring to Mystique and her time in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Henry knows, don't you now, Doctor? So here we go. He knows that sacrifices have to be made in order for a greater good to be achieved. So this Machiavellian ethos by which Sinister operates, the means justify the ends for him, the greater good. And he asks here, rhetorically, honestly, would he be willing to use Threnody in such a way so as to more quickly find a cure for this disease? Answer truthfully, Henry, am I not better equipped at this time to not only use Threnody in the best interests of mutant kind, but also to help her deal with the uncontrollable nature of her powers and the pain they cause her? So Beast here, he's thinking, and here we get that strange little panel layout and inset borders, and he says, let her go with him. And this surprises Iceman, but Beast says, he's right, Bobby. He can do more for her, more to fight the virus than we can, because he's willing to damn parts of his soul to the task, and we're not. So Sinister has her now. Admitting it and despising the choice are the first steps towards changing the indecision which has ruled Xavier's roost of late, he says. And Rogue asks a question that's been hanging in the air. Sinister, you said her powers only flared when she came close to someone with the virus, right? In the past it was Lefferts, earlier it was Infectia, but why did she blow up like that before? Ah, that is a mystery, Rogue, one I have no intention of sharing with you, now or ever. So, the inference that an engaged reader might draw is, well, when Gordon Lefferts opened Strife's canister, which released the legacy virus, Sinister was present. And has he contracted the legacy virus? Is that why he has such motivation to discover a cure for it? Is that what made for a build-up of plasma energy in Threnody, which we released, that she was drawing on the fact that he's infected and dying from the legacy virus? Interesting to consider that possibility, but now we're on the last page. And we go back to the county hospital 1 hour later, and Hank lifts Infectia out of her hospital bed, and he takes Infectia, her first name, her real name is Josephine, out into the hills to look out at the sunrise, which is what she wanted. And the narrative captions say, she's too weak to talk as the sun rises. Then she smiles and whispers, no smog today, and her soul quietly slips away. No flaring of her powers, no release of the virus. Henry McCoy holds her, tears flowing freely, not just for the loss of another life, but for what Infectia's death has meant to him. For in granting her last wish, Hank contradicted the scientist and himself for the sake of the man. So interesting how that moral, ethical dilemma resolves in the conclusion of the issue. He knows that both will be needed if a cure for this disease is going to be found, just as he knows now for the first time that he will have the strength to do it. And then next up, a new X-Man. Not exactly, but you won't believe it. And indeed, it's completely unexpected who shows up in the next issue of Adjectiveless as a potential X-Man. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 27. If you did, please like the video in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.